My name's Jo Bamborough. I run Good Things Collective, and my background is kind of working with young people, community groups. But for the last 7 or 8 years, we set up what was the Exchange and is now the Good Things Collective, and we do a range of different projects. We kind of work with anybody that wants to do creative things and see good things happen in Morecambe. Cooperation Street is a new project for us. We've just had confirmation of funding from Heritage Lottery Fund. It's our first heritage funding, our first heritage project. So we're learning an awful lot of stuff and ultimately looking into the history of the cooperative movement. Co-op building in the West End of Morecambe is something that we're obviously very keen on seeing renovated after being empty for 20 years. So for us, this project is really interesting, looking into the values of why that building's there, everything that it stood for. What was it like when that building was built? It was the most luxurious and glamorous department store in the area, apparently, according to some of the photographs you can find online. We're going to be working with the local high school, Bay Leadership Academy. We're going to be working with Morecambe Heritage Centre. We're going to be working with the archives in Manchester, the cooperative archives, and the Rochdale Pioneers Museum. There's other groups in the area as well. I think we're going to work with Learning Together, which is an amazing local kind of small charity. So we're going to be working with a lot of new people. Anybody that's interested in getting involved in the project can get involved in the project. So there'll be trips available, there'll be workshops and banner making. There'll be chance for people to learn new skills, people to experience new things, go to new places, and hopefully learn lots of things about, what the cooperative movement was.
My name's Steve. I'm one of the creative artists on the cooperative project, Cooperation Street. I am a sort of multi-skilled artist, but on this project I'm focusing on oral history and some creative writing. Part of the project is about an intergenerational connection so that young people can find out history from their elders. So one of the themes or strands, I guess, of that is for us to write letters to people from an older generation, asking them questions about the cooperative movement, about the co-op building in Morecambe, and finding out what memories and what history they have of all of that. I think they're going to hopefully gather some stories and some history and knowledge that they didn't have prior to the project, but also some skills as well. So, people don't write letters anymore. That's how I'm sort of pitching this. Everybody uses anything else, any other digital ways of keeping in contact with people. So to actually get a pen and paper and write a letter, there's an art to that.
I'm Charlotte and I'm part of the Cooperation Street project. I'm a illustrator. I use pen, print, collage to make my illustrations. In the workshops, we are going to look at packaging of the co-op and tea packaging in particular. The co-op had a whole variety of different teas, and for each cooperative shop or area they had a different blend of tea. We're going to look at the packets of tea and the packaging, and then we're going to make a new tea packet design. What the participants will get out of the workshop hopefully will be to look at advertising and the power of advertising and what some of the old co-op adverts were trying to portray, and then we'll also be looking at design, so they'll get some design skills, and we're going to display it in our Cooperation Street shop.
I'm Jules. I volunteer here at the Good Things Collective at the Rochdale and Morecambe. I've volunteered for the past 6 or 7 years now. In the banner making project, I hope to really explore and research the symbolism that went into the decorative aspects of the banners. Initially, you look at banners and they just look pretty things, but when you take a magnifying glass to them, as it were, you find out there's a lot of meanings going on. For instance, with the cooperative movement, you'll often see B's, which stand for industry and busyness. I'm hoping the participants will obviously enjoy getting their hands busy and working with crafts and art, but I also hope that they will learn something of the history of these banners, where they came from, and the possibilities of where we could take them to next.
Heritage projects are really important because how else do we continue telling stories? If we don't capture stories from people who are older than us now that we don't know, stories that we've never heard, what happens to them? They just inevitably disappear. So for us to capture stories from older generations now and be able to pass them on and keep them going, as buildings and environments change and architecture disappears as new buildings come into place and different things like that. It's important, I think, for us to remember our heritage and be able to pass that on to other people.
So there doesn't seem to be very much information about the cooperative in Morecambe, so we're kind of hoping that we'll find out more than we currently know about it. We're kind of looking at a lot of projects at the moment around kind of wellbeing, economy, and how we can kind of create a slightly more equitable or fair kind of context for our community. It's going to be really interesting looking into kind of how our experience now compares with the experience in times gone by.
My name is Kat and I work for the Cooperative Heritage Trust. We own 2 sites. We own Rochdale Pioneers Museum and the Cooperative Archive. So today we're at Rochdale Pioneers Museum. It's known as the birthplace of cooperation because it's the home of the first successful consumer co-op. Today we've been working with high school kids to introduce them to the cooperative movement and its relevance to Morecambe, to try and kickstart and inspire that creative journey that they're going to be doing with the collective.
So we have brought our current they're going to be GCSE art group for next year, 22 to 24. We're going to introduce them to the GCSE art course by doing a collaborative project with the Good Things Collective, who have really, really kindly organised this trip here today at the co-op in Rochdale. So we thought we'd kickstart the course by bringing them before they start in September. We're going to be doing some workshops back at school where the children can then design a banner, or they're going to be doing a postcard project, getting in touch with people who possibly was part of the cooperative group in Morecambe and share their stories and hopefully bring the past to life.
I think there's like direct parallels, aren't there, with what the Good Things Collective do and the cooperative movement. I think it's all about bringing people together, and I love that you've done so much community building in the project, and that's all to do with the co-op values really. It's about celebrating the locality and bringing energy back to places, and that's exactly what you're trying to do with your project. So great things for that.
I've learnt a lot just by being here today about the cooperative. I didn't understand how much teamwork was involved and how they came from nothing and how they struggled and got through those really hard times to get where they are today, which is really inspiring, I think, for people, especially Morecambe and places where people may be struggling in these current times, to think about keep going and eventually, you'll get there with hard graft.
Today we're in Manchester to visit the Cooperative Heritage Trust archives. It's an inspiration and learning visit to find some reference materials for our banner making and package design workshops that we're doing with our GCSE art group. And we're also hoping to learn a bit more about the Cooperative Society and hopefully a bit more about the history of Centenary House while we're at it.
My name's Liz McIver and I lead the Cooperative Heritage Trust team. Our small charity works to preserve and keep open Rochdale Pioneers Museum, which is the sort of established first successful cooperative retail store and society. And we also look after the Cooperative Archive, which is in Manchester. So I'm talking to you today from our reading room at the archive, which is based in Holyoke House on Hanover Street in central Manchester, and it's right in the heart of the old cooperative quarter.
It's super interesting. I really enjoy looking into the history of things, being able to find out where it's come from and how far it's progressed and how we can use that in our own work and what we're doing.
What people are really trying to do increasingly is trying to go back to the roots of these places, not necessarily to do the same thing, but to try to get a sense of the culture of the place, because actually the reason that these were significant buildings is because the movement was significant to local people at the time. It did something for them. There was some benefit for the immediate community. So that's really what more and more people are trying to achieve. They're trying to bring that sort of sense of place back. So I think if they can do that in Morecambe, people can kind of tap into just even really the idea, the values of what being cooperative is about. It doesn't mean you need to set a cooperative up. It just means the idea of democracy, solidarity, unity, doing things as a collective for the power of good.
I am really interested in the banners. I love the little intricacies of how the people of a certain area view their groups and their aims, but also being able to see the sort of broader spectrum of how it impacts on the greater scale, and looking at the different issues in the different areas and how they interact with each other.
I think what's really interesting about the banners is how they've all got these regional identities. Like, you know, they're very clearly proud of their community and their place, but they're still very clearly part of a much wider national society. I think it's great that they managed to keep their regional identity while being part of something much bigger.
Especially with the rainbows on the banners showing the unity and the blend of colours and the different aspects of all the things that come to make the sum has been super interesting to learn about, especially with the modern connotations of what rainbows represent. And also the labour and weight having the American spelling for solidarity with the anti-slavery movement in America, the recognition of not just the local and national issues that are going on, but also the international impact of things that are happening has been super interesting.
A lot of the region of particularly coastal towns that had fallen out of favour for holidaymakers and for day trippers, we're seeing a bit of a resurgence for that. And there's a lot of value there, that people don't want to travel as far, they don't want to sort of be contributing to the impacts of climate change, they want to be able to visit local places and to feel sort of ownership of local places. And they want those local places to be vibrant, to be used, to be safe, to be friendly, to be welcoming, to be clean. And that's what we all need to do, isn't it? We need to contribute to making our own places that much better.
We've learned a lot about how the various co-ops became kind of focal points for their individual communities. You know, there's a lot of kind of pride there, a lot of local identity tied up in all of the different cooperatives. And yeah, I think that's something to aim for with Centenary House in Morecambe, to allow it to be that kind of cornerstone of a community, something to build the West End community kind of around in the way that it was in its heyday.
I think it'd be a really great thing if the Centenary House building could be renovated and could be put to use in a way that would benefit the community, people who live in Morecambe, because that was originally what the Cooperative Society was there to do. And even if it's not a cooperative retail store anymore, what people would have wanted, the people who set that business up, they would want it to be some way towards community benefit and to bring that old and derelict building out of the ashes and have a renaissance for it.
We've come to the Morecambe Good Things Collective today with a group of our GCSE students to undertake 3 different workshops led by 3 different artists, all based around the theme of the Cooperation Street.
This is the start of the new term of the GCSE art students, and we've hosted them here for a full day of creative activities and had a refresh on what we learnt at the Rochdale Pioneers Museum and about the cooperative movement.
The kids have absolutely enjoyed it. They have been learning about what a banner is, how to make a banner and make it thoughtful and thought-provoking and personal to them.
The symbols on the banners are usually used to support the co-op. For example, the ram on one of the banners is to support Rochdale, which is where the cooperative came from.
Some symbols have like different meanings, like for instance you have the little beehive that could show like teamwork. That's the most obvious one there is.
They've also been learning about letter writing and the importance of an actual handwritten letter and how much more special that can be compared with like a digital email or a text, and then wrote their own letters to people who would have worked at the Cooperative Society a long time ago and trying to get information from them about how life would have been when they worked at the co-op. Did they feel that working for the co-op was a really nice place to work? What was life like back then?
I think probably writing over an email, you put more effort in it and it's more important to you, it feels more special to you, because you know it's like effort and hard work put into the letter more than the email. It's a bit more personal. So.
A letter, it's more important because you're not just like sending a text message, you're actually putting time to get the paper and the letter itself, and then you have to write it all down, and say you're using a pen, you've got no mistakes. You have to make sure it's perfect, I mean you've got to put your heart and soul into it. I think I'd ask how much fun it was or if they enjoyed it or not, because I think that's the main part of a job. You've got to make sure you enjoy it, not just that it's something you've got to do.
They've also done a tea making workshop, like looking at how they can advertise tea but in a often humorous or thought-provoking way, which I was really impressed with all the different kind of results that they've come up with.
We were learning about packaging design and how to appease customers. It was about specific groups of people, so you could have tea for rich people, poor people, I don't know. For example, this is for people who like feisty tea. I'd say it'd have a bit of spice to it.
Right, you see this? Yeah. This tea is called authority. Question it.
I made homosexuality for sharing the love. Enjoy a brew filled with pride. It takes a while because you've got to get it perfect, you've got to plan it, and then you've got to make people want it. So you've got to have a slogan and all of that.
It was brilliant. We had loads of fun. All the kids were really into all the things that they were doing, and they seemed to enjoy themselves. They got into the funny words, thinking of names of tea that end ITY. They enjoyed that, and they did really well drawing their tea boxes and thinking of logos and images to put on their tea packaging.
I learned where the co-op was from and how it was formed. What the co-op movement's about is that you can get food for an affordable price that's actually good.
The co-op was trying to sell things to people for a cheaper price, so they save more money, so we still have enough money to pay for other stuff as well.
These geezers came along for wait a minute, this isn't right. Let's do something about it.
You should treat people with respect. How you want to be treated, you should treat someone like that. Some of them do, but then some of them just want them to get on with it and just deal with what they have to go through.
It's been great to see everybody engaging in heritage and creativity and thinking about what Centenary House could mean for us as a community.
Our students are going to be involved with an exhibition that's going to take place in November. We're currently working at school producing a collaborative piece which links really well with Cooperation Street values about working together as a community. So each student's been given a piece of a jigsaw made out of wood, and they're all going to do their artwork on that, and then it will be brought together in the exhibition. I've just been absolutely blown away by today's workshop, and I can't thank the Good Things Collective and everybody involved enough in allowing our students at Bay Leadership Academy the opportunity to get involved with this project. We're really excited to see the outcomes as well.
Hi, so my name's Chuck Whitehead, and the piece I've done for this Art of Cooperation, it kind of came to me as soon as I heard about the opportunity for the show. And I wanted to make the ingredients of well-being as if they're shop packages. So take notice, keep learning, connect, give, and be active. And the nice thing about them being in a shop is that actually they're free, so you don't need to go to a shop, but this kind of highlights that. The opening was super, and people talked about everybody's stuff, and it was 30 people here. It's nice to see each other's things. There's a few people working on packaging images. We talked about that and reimagining what that could mean. I think the reception's been really good. There was a nice buzzy scene.
My name is Peter Wade, and I'm one of the volunteers here at Morecambe Heritage Centre. I think it's been very good. We had quite a lot of visitors, especially in the first week or two, probably our highest visitor numbers per day. It was interesting to see the work that the projects have been doing with school students, and so some of those, certainly on our opening day, some of them came along to have a look at our exhibition here, and I think to their surprise they actually quite enjoyed it and hope to come again just to have a bit more of a look and of course see themselves on screen. And of course we've had people in who remember the co-op, remember shopping there like like me lots of years ago, and I was dragged around by my mum. Some people who worked there as well, they've come by. And of course people who perhaps see this still as a key building in the West End, but of course one which has fallen into neglect, sadly, and it'd be nice to see it revived.
Well, it's a great entry point because it's Centenary House is on our doorstep. The whole history of the cooperative movement, it's northwest of England, all just down the motorway, in every direction you go. It's in our heritage. We may not know about that, but the stories that have been coming out are fantastic. So I think it's good. I think it's a kind of no-brainer. Doesn't make the project any easier, but I think people will understand it.
Well, I think it's a very good use for the building. It's hard to find uses for big buildings like that. At the moment, the co-op shop is just a tiny little corner, I think, of the whole thing. But the site of the co-op building, literally at the crossroads of the West End, is very important. It lets the West End down at the moment, as it appears. But it'd be very nice to see it restored, and that will help the West End of Morecambe become once again the best end of town.